Hello and welcome to For You. Reese and Jonathan here to discuss an article that I think you wrote, Jonathan. Is that right?
That's correct. It's one of my favorite topics. That's the topic of animation, specifically 2D animation, which is drawn by hand.
It's so cool that even today, when we have computer-generated graphics, people are still drawing animations by hand.
That's right.
I think you can really tell the difference as well, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Animation is probably something that you're familiar with, although this word might be new to you. It's basically cartoons, movies or TV shows that are drawn by people or more recently by computers. But we'll talk more about that and what exactly animation consists of in the article. So let's get into the article, which is called Hand-Drawn 2D Animation, an Art of Its Own.
Reading. Hand-drawn 2D animation, an art of its own. These days, when we think of animation, we might think of films using 3D computer animation, such as Frozen 2 or Toy Story 4. If these had been made without computers, however, they would have looked very different. Let's take a look at the world of 2D hand-drawn animation. While animation is a newer medium than many others, it started back in the early 20th century. This was a time when technology was much more limited than what we have today. Each frame of the film had to be drawn by hand. This was done on a thin sheet of transparent plastic. The outlines of the characters were drawn on the front of the sheets using ink. The colors of the characters were painted on the backs. These plastic sheets, called cells, were then placed over painted backgrounds. They were photographed by a camera, one cell at a time. When the images were played back on a movie projector, the illusion of movement was created. As you can imagine, creating a full-length movie took an incredible amount of time and patience.
So let's dive into the article all about animation. These days, when we think of animation, we might think of films using 3D computer animation, such as Frozen 2 or Toy Story 4, both of which are movies that I've seen and enjoyed. So animation, as we talked about in the introduction, is a noun, and it's basically cartoons. Movies or TV shows that have been drawn by hand or using a computer and then put together into moving images. There are many different kinds of animation. There's anime, which is from Japan and has a very distinctive style. There's Disney animation, which is all cute and cartoony. There's even stop-motion animation, which is done using clay and real-life things. So some animations may use a 2D style, whereas others might use a 3D style. The D in 2D and 3D stands for dimensional, which is a very complicated word, and it's related to mathematics, but basically 2D means it's flat, and 3D means it's not. It's more realistic. In terms of animation, a 2D animation has probably been drawn on paper by hand, whereas a 3D animation has probably been made on a computer using models that are more realistic and actually have 3 dimensions, like us. Therefore, a 3D animation probably looks more realistic, closer to real life than a 2D animation does.
Yes, so the article says, if these had been made without computers, however, they would have looked very different. Let's take a look at the world of 2D hand-drawn animation. We have a sentence pattern here that is being used to show how if we make a change in the past, it has an impact on something else. Let's look at the first part of the sentence, which contains the past perfect form of the verb, if these had been made without computers. Later in the sentence, we have the past auxiliary verb, then have, then the past participle. They would have looked very different. So the change made in the past is if these had been made without computers. And the result of that change is they would have looked very different. Here are some other sentences using the same pattern. If Sally had woken up earlier, she wouldn't have been late for school this morning. So if Sally had woken up earlier is the change, she wouldn't have been late for school this morning is the result of that change. If it hadn't rained yesterday, we could have gone on a picnic.
Well, getting back to the article, it continues with, while animation is a newer medium than many others, it started back in the early 20th century, which is longer ago than you might expect for something like animation. The article used the word medium here, which is a very interesting word. It said, while animation is a newer medium than many others. Medium here does not refer to something's size as being in the middle. Instead, it refers to a way of transmitting a message. A medium can really be anything. A painting is a medium for transmitting art, and perhaps there's even a message within the art that the artist wants you to know. Music is a medium. TV, film, songs, these are all mediums for one message coming from the creator to you. In this example, the medium is animation.
That's right. The article says this was a time when technology was much more limited than what we have today. Limited is an adjective. It means small in number or amount, and not too much or too many. If I say, I have a limited number of tickets to sell, that means I don't have that many tickets. In the case of the article, it says that technology at that time was limited. In this case, they're talking about the ability of the technology. These days, we have advanced computers that can do all kinds of amazing things. But back when 2D animation first started, these computers weren't around, so everything had to be done by hand.
Yeah, and that limitation on technology means that there's a very different process that goes into making these movies. As the article explains, each frame of the film had to be drawn by hand. And considering how many frames are in one movie, that's a lot of drawing.
That's right.
So what is a frame? Well, frame is a noun, and usually a frame is the outside part of a picture or photograph. The part that holds the picture inside, and it's usually made of wood. But here, in this context, a frame is something different. A frame is a single static part of a film reel, kind of like a photograph. One 90-minute film will be made up of hundreds or thousands of individual frames. And when you put them all together, they make a video. And that's basically what animation is. Here's an example sentence with frame. There must be a few frames of this film missing as the action jumps from one point to another.
That's right. The article says, this was done on a thin sheet of transparent plastic. The outlines of the characters were drawn on the front of the sheets using ink. So transparent is an adjective, and it means it's clear, like you can see right through it. For example, windows are transparent.
Unless they're super dirty.
That's right. Plastic is a noun, and it's a material like glass, metal, or wood. But plastic is not natural, it's completely man-made. And while it's very useful, it's not great for the environment because it doesn't break down the way natural materials do. An example sentence would be, this bottle is made of plastic, so if you drop it, it doesn't break.
The article also used the word outline, and you can probably guess what this word means from its component parts. Outline. It's a noun, and it's the line around something that shows the shape or figure of that thing. The outside part of a thing where the edge of the thing exists. The outline of a person is the shape of a person. If you place a flat object on a piece of paper, you can create the outline of that thing by drawing around the edges of it. The outline of a character, in terms of drawing on frames, will be the outer shape of the character, but maybe, initially at least, without any details on the inside. Here's an example sentence. Start by drawing the outline of the subject's face, then fill in the details later. So far we have a frame with the outline of a character. Now we need to add some color and detail. The article says, the colors of the characters were painted on the backs. These plastic sheets, called cells, were then placed over painted backgrounds. So this is a whole lesson into how to make an animation. It's a very long and painstaking process, but it creates a beautiful product. The The article used the word background here, and the background of something is the part of a picture usually, or a scene or design that forms a setting for the main figures or objects or characters. Or the background is the part that appears furthest away from the viewer. It's the back part of a scene or a place. If you're watching a movie and two characters are standing in the street talking to each other, the background might include things like buildings and cars and other people. Those things aren't the focus of the scene, but they help to create the setting. Here's an example sentence with background. In the background of the painting, you can see the yellow mountains of central China.
We also have the word cell. So these sheets of transparent plastic, which contain the drawn and painted characters, are called cells, and they get put on top of the background. So usually in an animation, the background will remain constant while the cells are constantly changing so that it looks like they're moving.
And so that means that the artists don't have to redraw the background every time.
Exactly.
Work smart, not hard.
The article says they were photographed by a camera, one cell at a time. When the images were played back on a movie projector, the illusion of movement was created. An illusion is something that looks or sounds real, but actually isn't. For example, a magician might look like he made a rabbit appear out of nowhere, but actually the rabbit was always there. It's just an illusion they created. In the case of movies, the pictures aren't actually moving. If you pick up a reel of film and look at it, it's actually just a long collection of pictures. But if you quickly play them one after the other, it looks like one moving picture. For example, let's say there's an animation of a man touching his nose. We might see it look like this. But if you look at the film, you'll see a series of pictures like this, 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 and this. And then the film is played back at a high speed, so it looks like one moving picture. So when you stop and imagine that for each second of animation, between 8 to 24 separate drawings had to be made, you realize that's a lot of work. The movie projector is a machine that puts the movie on the screen. The tiny frames of the film are put in front of a bright light that makes the picture big. If you go to a movie theater today, the projector is at the back, projecting the image on the screen. That's why if you stand up in a movie theater, you sometimes see your shadow on the screen.
That's right.
Light, yeah.
I remember seeing the silhouettes of people walking past, interrupting the most emotional part of the movie.
Yes.
We also saw the verb phrase play back. To play back something means usually to play a video or some music that was recently recorded. And usually we play back some music or a video to check how it looks or how it sounds, to see the quality. After you record a video, you might want to play it back on a big screen, perhaps, to see if it looks good. Well, back to the article, and it says, as you can imagine, creating a full-length movie took an incredible amount of time and patience. Absolutely. I don't think I would have the patience.
No, me neither.
The article used the word incredible here, which is a great adjective to use. Incredible means amazing, so amazing that it's almost impossible to believe it's true. Incredible is quite a strong word, so we should only use it for things that are so big or so amazing or so special that it's almost like it couldn't be real. Incredible is usually used in a positive way. For example, if there's a movie you really like, you could say that was an incredible movie. But it could be used to describe negative things too. For example, if you hit your leg against the table, you could be in an incredible amount of pain. Here's an example sentence with incredible. The restaurant had the most incredible pasta I've ever tasted.
Oh, really?
Okay, so good.
Give me the number later.
I'll take you there for lunch.
All right. Okay, next we can talk about patience. Patience is a noun. It's the ability to wait and accept delays without getting angry or upset. We often use this word when we're talking about work that goes very slowly and takes a lot of time to finish. For example, Billy learns English very slowly, so teaching him requires a lot of patience. You can also use this word to describe waiting for something. Billy showed a lot of patience when waiting for the bus. The adjective form of patience is patient. Billy was very patient waiting for the bus. And the adverb form of patient is patiently. Billy was patiently waiting for the bus. You might wonder what I mean when I say full-length film. These days, a movie you normally go see in a movie theater is usually between 1.5 to 3 hours. This is what we would call a full-length or feature-length film. The length is measured in time. Snow White is a full-length film. At the time it came out, most other animated films were much shorter, often just 7 or 8 minutes. So instead of full-length films, we'd call these short films. A long time ago in theaters, animated short films were often played before starting the main feature-length movie. When you think about how much work goes into making just 1 second of animation, it's not hard to see why animated films were so short back at that time. It took a lot of time and effort to make Snow White, but it was a very successful movie. It was so successful that more full-length animated movies would follow in the coming years.
Would you say that you're a patient person?
I can be, yes. Yeah, I think so.
You have to be patient to be a teacher because students do learn at different paces, right?
Of course.
I can be patient when I need to be if it's in a professional or working situation, but sometimes I get very impatient with my friends if they're consistently late to things or, I don't know, if they're irritating me in some way or another.
Yeah, that I could understand.
My mother was famously impatient.
Okay.
She had quite a short fuse. Well, that's the end of our day 1 article about animation. Hopefully you guys have learned something about what animation is and how it's actually created. As we've discovered from the article, it takes a lot of time, work, and skill to make an animation because you have to draw every single cell by hand. Or at least that's how they used to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays there's a new way to do animation. Perhaps we'll find out more about that tomorrow.
For You Chat.
Okay, our For You Chat question for today is which movies using 2D animation have you seen? Talk about them. So Reese, what movies have you seen using 2D animation?
In my 30 years on this planet, I've seen many 2D animations. I think some of my favorites probably were by Studio Ghibli. Or Ghibli. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Ghibli.
Yes. You might have seen some of their movies, actually. They're a Japanese anime studio.
Yes.
And I think actually tomorrow we're going to talk about maybe one of their movies.
Yes, we are.
They make just beautiful animation, and a lot of it's still hand-drawn, even though there's computer technology. I think they combine both technologies, actually.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the stories that they tell are so fantastical and creative, and that you can tell that they've put so much time into their drawings, and it really shows. They're movies that really bring you into a whole different world.
Yes.
I think my favorite one would probably be Castle in the Sky, which in Chinese I think is 天空之城.
Yes. And the director of that movie, Miyazaki, I've heard that he personally checks every frame of the entire movie, and if he's not happy with a specific frame, he will tear it out, draw it himself by hand, and place it into the movie.
That's incredible.
And the backgrounds for most of those movies are done entirely by painting. They use hand-painted backgrounds.
You can see that.
Yes.
It looks like an oil painting almost.
Yes. One of the first Studio Ghibli movies I saw was Princess Mononoke.
That's a great one.
And yes, the forests with the trees and everything. Oh, the scenery is just fantastic. I
think some of you at home have definitely seen some of these movies by Studio Ghibli. They're very famous movies. The most famous one is Spirited Away, which I think we'll mention tomorrow.
That's right.
But you guys can think about this question as well. Which movies using 2D animation have you seen? You can talk about those with your friends and trade stories about your favorites. But for now, that's all the time we have. We'll be back tomorrow for day 2 of our article all about animation.
Vocabulary Review
Frame. The police officer stopped the video to see the frame that showed the thief's face. Plastic. This hot dog is made of plastic, but it looks so real that I almost bit it. Outline. Steve drew an outline of his dream house for the builders to see the shape and size he wanted. Background. Mary asked her friend to take a picture of her with Taipei 101 in the background. Incredible. Blue whales can grow to an incredible size and can weigh as much as 33 elephants. Patience. Tim told his girlfriend that he'd be a bit late to dinner. After waiting an hour, she lost patience and went home.
智慧小补帖
Animation. Transparent. Cell. Illusion.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net